Vítejte u podcastu Aloisovy otázky pro pečující o blízké s Alzheimerovou nemocí, který pro vás připravuje nadační fond Seniorina.
3, 2, 1. Hello everyone. I would like to introduce to our listener Gail Elliot, who is a gerontologist, dementia specialist, and CEO and founder of DementiAbility. I would like to welcome you to Aloisovy otázky. Aloisovy otázky means Alois's question, and it's inspired by Dr. Alzheimer. That was Alois Alzheimer, of course. I would like to tell to our listeners first that you and the founder of our foundation know each other personally. I've learned and heard so much about you, only good things. And I must say that, like, all this inspiration. We can start again if you want.
Sorry about that. It was my alarm to say, make sure you're tuned in. Do you want to start again?
We can start again, and I will speak less.
No,
Okay.
you're doing a great job.
Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Hannah, and I would like to introduce you and welcome Miss Gail Elliot, who is a gerontologist. She's a dementia specialist, and she's a founder and CEO of DementiAbility. I have heard so much about you from our founder, who is called Jarka Schwarzbachova, and you have taken her under your wing, and she has visited you in Canada. She has completed many workshops with you, and she has told me that she even slept over at your house. And she has brought so much, not only inspiration, but also some aids and some I can see the dog behind you, actually, the purple one. We have that one in our center. So many things she has brought to our center, and she has been spreading here in Czech Republic. So, welcome. My first question for you is, I would like to discuss the history of the Montessori method and the education and how you feel it relates to senior care.
Okay. A number of years ago, Dr. Cameron Camp connected the Montessori vision and philosophy to dementia care. What he saw was Dr. Maria Montessori said, prepare the environment and you will set the children up for success. She also worked with adolescents. She did not work with people with dementia or older adults. And at the time, I would imagine we didn't know too much about dementia and Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia. But Dr. Camp saw that special relationship between her work and dementia care in that enabling, Maria Montessori called it prepared environment. So I learned from Dr. Camp, and then the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to dig into other research. So what I soon learned is, and he had done some research, but I dug deeper. I saw then it was connected to occupational therapy, therapeutic recreation. He had already identified, which I was already familiar with, the work on memory from Schachter and Tulving and Smith and others who had pioneered that whole research on our understanding of impaired memory and spared memory. So his work, Dr. Maria Montessori inspired Dr. Camp, and Dr. Camp inspired me to create all the tools and the education that I provide for dementia care. And these methods apply beyond dementia care, the way I've developed them, because they're very person-centered. But we need research and practice in dementia care. So that's why I have stayed focused on dementia.
So could you tell us some of these principles that help the approach to be person-specific or person-centered?
Absolutely. So one of the things that has been vitally important in care across the board, whether you say healthcare, social care, whatever, is the work of Dr. Tom Kitward was on personhood. person-centered care in dementia care. So as I was going through the research and I saw how different things were connecting, I created a model, and it's called the WOW model. Now, when you translate into your language, Yorka's probably using different words than I used, but the W is who. And if it's going to be person-centered, we need to make sure that we know who the person is now. So type of dementia, any other disease, what their memory's doing now, what their judgment's like now. All these things are critical at in the present, but we also need to understand who they were in the past. So this is the part that most care omits completely. If you're going to be person-centered and you understand brain and behavior, you need to understand that there's some forms of spared memory that explain the O for observation in the WOW model. So knowing who they were in the past, their habits, their skills, their strengths, what do we know? That their triggers all impact what you see. So once you understand that the brain plus their life story and the environment contributes to behavioral outcomes, you take what you know in the who, you take what your observations are in the present to create a plan about what to do. And when you create what to do, it's the interventions. And there's more and more research on the neuroplastic brain that shows that the neurons that fire together, they're going to wire together. The stronger the wiring, the more success you will see with people with dementia. But it's that old theory, use it or lose it. But you can only do that one person at a time.
So does this apply to all types of dementia?
Yes, absolutely. All types of dementia. It could be developmental disability. It doesn't just have to be dementia. It doesn't. You often are working with people who have mental health disorders, with or without dementia. If you focus on the person using this model of who, past and present, plus your observations, taking what we understand about the brain into account, you can figure out what to do. All behavior has meaning, and DementiAbility teaches us we can understand what that meaning is if you understand the brain and you know the life story. And I'm going to tell you that's the biggest aha moment when I'm teaching. People kind of go, wow, I don't know anything about my residents, my clients, whatever. And one of the things that I've heard way too many times is staff have gone to funerals and they said, geez, I wish I had known this when they were alive. Let's get that information out of computers, out of the brains of the families and the person, put it into documents that will be helpful for us to use. So, for example, if you do this with pictures of them past and present with a description, now she can be reminded of her own life. So it's not just us.
So, and what are some challenges that come with implementing this DementiAbility method? And if there are some, how do you overcome them?
Oh, there's lots of challenges. Perhaps I would say that the biggest challenge is that the care workers have not had this this education before they started their careers. So I've had people who are neurologists come to my workshop, medical doctors, lots of nurses, occupational therapists, but I also get the housekeepers, the dietary, etc. And everybody says the same thing. We did not learn about any of this. There's bits that people have learned, but the uniqueness is that I've taken things from many disciplines. So there's parts of it that are new to everybody. So what is the challenge? I've got to introduce them to these methods once they're working. So the biggest challenge, there's a number of challenges, but one of the biggest challenges that I'm facing right now with the pandemic is staff shortages. So trying to get people to come to education when we can't even fill spots. And this is a global phenomenon I know right now. So that is a problem, is to get the education out there. So we know, and one of the comments we get on the evaluation, whether it's family care partners or professionals, everybody needs this education. I wish I had had it sooner. So if we do get the education to individuals, the next challenge is I've got to get the education to the leadership team and to the organization if it's an organization. The larger the organization, the bigger the job is. So if I can, one of the ways to overcome barriers is in small organizations, it's easier to create a plan to train everybody. But then you have staff turnover and you always have somebody coming in that needs the education again. That's okay. We can do that in small numbers. But the larger the organization, the harder it is to get the team on board. And I can't go in and mentor them all. I have to find people with shining eyes, people who are inspired to say, let's make a change. And when leadership is on board, and we start with, in long-term care, start with one home area, create what we call a center of excellence to become a DementiAbility home area so that other areas will then do the same thing. What's interesting in some of the homes I've worked with, we did that, and we started with the one that was probably the most challenging because it was people with dementia that were a little more advanced, had a little more diverse needs that we had to meet. But what was interesting is staff in the other areas say, well, why I want to work there. In the area nobody wanted to work in, they wanted to work there. That is success. But that takes a commitment from management and the team. So those are the biggest challenges. The other challenges relate to other things that are going on. For example, during the pandemic, I'm not sure what it was like where you are, but the biggest problem was inconsistent messaging about what was okay. Can I share an activity? Can we gather in the same room if we all wear masks? If we wear masks, we clean our hands and we clean our activities. Can we not do this? So trying to combat some of the messaging around COVID has been quite a challenge, but things are improving. Depends where you are. So the challenges are to get the education into the hands of the practitioners in a way that the organizations adopt it, so it becomes a standard of practice. Once you create the standard of practice that is embedded, my goal is one day, and I know this is a big goal, is to create a world where we say, well, didn't we always do it this way?
That would be perfect.
Yeah. So that the challenges are immense, but we work hard to overcome them.
So if I could ask specifically about the method, how do you make sure that the person is taken care of emotionally and psychologically? Is there something you do to make sure that's taken off?
Yes, absolutely. That's an excellent question. So DementiAbility, what I have done is I've gone through the literature to look at, because there's a lot of literature on behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia, PPSDs, as you know. Mm-hmm. But in Ontario in particular, we started this language, it's called responsive behaviors. In other words, the needs have not been met. So what I did is I went through research looking at sort of why the behavior, what's going on in dementia care. And if you go through the research, there's 4 things that keep coming up across the different types of research you look at. It's needs, interests have not been taken into account, their skills and abilities, and the care and compassion piece, something as simple as a name badge. So I don't know if you've ever seen the show Cheers, but there's a song in it that says, everybody wants a place where everyone knows your name. If you want to feel connected emotionally and socially, the starting base is knowing somebody's name. But this is brain and behavior again, because if you don't know they can't read, that they can read and they can see if you do it right, you're not going to meet a need emotionally, psychologically, socially. if you don't understand some of these basic concepts. So we look at boredom is a big boredom, loneliness, lack of success, lack of care and compassion. Well, if loneliness is an issue, how do you meet that? And that's what these things are behind me, as you have probably seen already. If somebody hasn't always got a person, an alternative connection might work. But again, you go back to the WOW model. Who is this person? Who was this person? What are your observations? You hand it to one person, say, look what I have. If they embrace it and they hug it and love it, you've met an emotional connection need. And there's a lot of research now on doll therapy. Lots of people enjoy the robotic pets, but the dolls are a little bit harder for people to embrace as an idea. But we did some, we can't call it research, it was just an evaluation of what happened if. So we had people with a 2-minute attention span where people, I would say their emotional needs are not being met most of the time because people don't know how to engage with them. And we used that purple guy or a robotic doll, and that's the one sitting in front of it. And they had a 2-minute attention span. And staff were asking for a PRN to bring down their behavior. And out of we had 9 people in this sample, with 2-minute attention span, and by giving them something they could engage with and cuddle, the average time of attention was 1 hour. That's meeting their connection, emotional need. So that's just an example, but we do things like put them in book clubs, and that's a really positive thing because now people feel connected. People need people or alternatives.
It's okay. Can I ask you how validation comes into it?
Okay, so I also teach a communication course, and with the communication course, I focus on acknowledge people's feelings, acknowledge how they're feeling, don't argue. And the most important part of this conversation is that a lot of people don't understand that memory is impaired. So we need to give facts, seek opinions. And if somebody says, I have to get to work, don't argue. Acknowledge the feeling that I have a purpose, I have something to do, this is what's spared in my brain. And instead of ignoring, arguing, just go, oh, know the facts. You always worked at a grocery store. Oh, so you provide the facts. You're not going to create the frustrations. They're not trying to manipulate you. They're not trying to do things that are being difficult. Their brain just isn't operating the way it used to.
Can external cues, like the one you showed with the lady, help within that?
Yes, exactly. So if you can do something as like this, for example, on their bedroom door, you know, that they can find their room successfully. This is what they look like in the past. This is what they look like in the present. So if they can't find their way, they're arguing that they don't live here. Well, now you've got some details, and this will be in their room to explain, you know, oh, you were married and you have 2 children, and now we focus on some facts. So one of the other strategies that we have used is in long-term care, we've created bus stops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, you have to go. Why don't you wait at the bus, at the bus stop? I'll be with you in a minute. In fact, you know, I'm kind of busy right now. Would you help me? And then we can get going together. So by the time you engage them, they forgot they had to leave. And what you're doing is you're going to create a new neural pathway. If they're always trying to leave, engage them at the time they have to leave. Give them a reason, a purpose, address boredom, loneliness, set them up for success. So don't argue, acknowledge. And validate is a good word too. But the point is don't argue. Don't argue. Go with them, see through their eyes, and go with them wherever they are and where they want to be. Now, sometimes there's safety issues in this. So if they say that they've taken their medication and the pill pack is still full and they're living on their own, you clearly have to figure out how to communicate that. But instead of arguing, no, you haven't, no, you haven't, no, you know, and I wonder if maybe you thought you did today. I know you always, see, now I'm not arguing with them in a way that you always forget. I wonder if maybe today you forgot because it looks like those pills are here. Do you think it would be a good idea? I know you say you never want to miss your pills. So go with them on the journey so that you don't have arguments that are going to challenge. Because they just create more challenges when you argue.
You have mentioned that all behavior has meaning. Could you maybe elaborate on that and give us some examples that could maybe help us understand what it means?
Sure. So this is again where that person-centered WOW model comes into play. If you look at who the person was in the past, for example, there's a gentleman that, this was a really good example. There was a gentleman in a home and they noticed every time they had their entertainment, he was wandering. And they took the workshop, they looked at the WOW model, who was he, who is he? And they said, well, he used to be a famous musician. Well, after a closer look, under O for observation, look where he's headed whenever somebody has a microphone or a guitar. And so what they did is they went and got his guitar. Now this man has no vocabulary, no language skills left. So they went and got the guitar and he started strumming and they went, good for you. And he just lit up. This face that had just been walking around, lost, lit up. Over time, even though he has no language left, they got him some words and he's starting to put some words into the songs again. Is he playing like he used to? Absolutely not. Is he happy? Absolutely. So going up to the band he was in his habit from the past, his overly learned memory was, if there's a microphone, I must be here to play, because you don't have a microphone any other time, correct? Also, if they always left at a certain time of the day. So for example, a man moved into a long-term care home. He had been visiting his wife every day, always left at 3 o'clock. What happens the day he moves in? He's going to leave at 3 o'clock. It's not because he's wandering, exit seeking, pacing, etc. It's because his overly learned unconscious behavior was to leave. Another example of this is if a person always got dressed in the bedroom and care staff tried to dress them in the bathroom, why are they combative? You don't get dressed in the bathroom. You get dressed in a bedroom. What are you doing with me in here? This isn't right. So those are examples. There's lots, but that gives you sort of an idea.
Could you tell us one example about agitation? I know you talked about wandering, but agitation is also a common problem with people with dementia.
Well, one of the things to watch out for with agitation is when is it occurring? Why is it occurring? So all behavior has meaning, the when, the why. When does this not happen? You'll often find they're not agitated when they're engaged and they're happy. And one of the things that's often misunderstood is people call it sundowning around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There is something called sundowning, but boredom is not sundowning. If they are engaged at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you may find that the behaviors don't occur. They're not as agitated. They're not trying to leave. They're not getting frustrated. When a person does not understand his or her world, they do get agitated. And I do an exercise when I'm teaching, getting people to stand to do nothing. And you start to see them squirming around and, trying to read things and whatever. That's only 2 minutes. And when you see how many unoccupied hours a person with dementia has, you start to see why they might become agitated.
So does your method, do you feel or have you seen that it promotes independence?
Oh, yes. We have seen people in the community when we put all the memory supports up, for example, something like how to find the toilet, what to do when they get into the bathroom. We have found that they can go to the toilet independently. You label drawers and cupboards. They can find things. You put an agenda up that tells them what they might need to do today. You get a dry erase board with some facts on it. We have seen people function at a higher level in the community so that it helps to keep them functioning at a higher level longer. But even in long-term care, we have had people go into long-term care and using these kinds of wayfinding signs, including the toilet sign. There was one home where they had 16 people who, after 3 months, were all toileting independently. They had a dry incontinent product at the end of the day. And in another home, they worked on people dressing themselves, and they were all dressing themselves after, some of them was almost immediately. So yes, the independence is enhanced. So in a disease, everybody thinks goes like this. If you can see it go like this and actually see their functioning improve, we're going against what everybody understands. And that's why this education is important.
So if you don't mind, I will ask you a personal question.
Sure.
I know that you have been taking care of your mother. I know that Jerka was sleeping even in her room. And I would like to ask if you have changed the room and the surroundings of her room when she was living with you.
Yeah, so when she was, and my mom passed away, actually, I think it's 4 years ago this week. She lived a good life until she died. She was a lot of, she didn't understand her world, which was very, very difficult. But this is exactly what this isn't the one, I had a different one. But this is what I put on her bedroom door, because one night she came and got into my bed instead of her bed. She went to the washroom. So we had signs on the bathroom for the toilet. She never needed this, but I had it ready. The other thing I did is I had a dry erase board. And if I, for example, was working in my office on this dry erase board, I would say, Mom, I'm upstairs. Read your book. If she was napping and woke up, it would say, read your book. I'll be down shortly. So I would just pop down, because she was not safe going into the kitchen. So what I did not do is I did not label cupboards and drawers, because I didn't want her to find knives. And what she would do is she would wash dishes, and she would do a terrible job of washing dishes. So I didn't want them in the cupboards. I would just say, oh, you were so helpful. What would I do without you? And then I would just say, just leave them on the counter. That'll be my job. You do the rest. And she was happy with that. So yes, and in the kitchen, I had a 7-day schedule on a dry erase board and a pegboard, and it showed what she would be doing every day of the week. All she had to do is go and look at it and go, okay. And it would say what today was. So lots of memory supports to keep her functioning. The biggest challenge with her is I was getting to the point that I couldn't bathe her anymore. I was afraid I was going to drop her. And that's why we decided that, you know what, I think I need her to live with the supports, the social connection, etc. So she moved to long-term care, but I made sure the environment was set up there for success. Mm-hmm. So I redid the bathroom before she had her first bath in long-term care. I put a spa basket together. So the first time they asked her, because in her mind, she believed she didn't need help. So instead of saying, would you like me help you with the bath? It was, would you like to go to the spa? And she said, yes, of course. So that's brain and behavior again. It's learned associations, conditioned behavior, create every positive. And the day she moved in to create the positive association with her new apartment, I got a gift basket that I had a staff member say, welcome to your new apartment building. And then in her room, gifts to open. well, this is a great place to live, isn't it? All of those things are important to set somebody up for success.
Mm-hmm. That's very nice. Thank you so much for sharing. And also another question about your family is that you work with your daughter.
Yes.
How is it? Tell me.
I love working with my daughter. I am so lucky. She had no intention of working in dementia care when she graduated. She had taken psychology in university, but she thought she was going to work with autism. And the career started to go in a different direction. And one day she said, I don't know. She ended up in the restaurant industry. And I said, come work with me for just a short time. I need some help. Well, the rest is history. She loved it so much. She teaches, she does a beautiful job. We work with organizations, the documents we create, we do it in partnership, and I am just very blessed.
That sounds very nice.
I am very fortunate.
I wish we all were, but yes. I have to work with Jarka, and she's basically my third mom now. I have mother, stepmom, and Jarka.
Jarka's a beautiful woman.
So the most important question, are you coming to Europe soon, or do you make any workshops that our listeners can connect to, or how can they get your knowledge to inspire them?
So because of the pandemic, I have not made any arrangements to go anywhere that I have to fly. So what I've been doing is offering the workshop on Zoom. So if people were interested, we could easily set up a workshop. For example, this coming weekend, I'm teaching at a university in Taiwan. So because we are 12 hours difference. So I'm teaching from 9 p.m. until midnight my time, so I can accommodate them. And we've done 2 days already. And now I'm going to do the next 2 days so that we can connect. So I've had people from different countries. We've been teaching in England, and I now have 2 people in England who are now trainers for their organization. So yes, we can set up something so that the time difference works for both of us. No problem.
No problem. Great. That's good to hear. So my last question will be, is there something you would suggest to caregivers? Do you have any tips and tricks that you think they should know to make sure their loved one lives better, and they do as well?
I absolutely do. So I have delivered a different program to caregivers than I do to professionals. During the pandemic, I wrote a book for caregivers, because what we were finding is without the community supports, without being able to take people out, the decline in those living with dementia accelerated, because caregivers were doing their best by themselves, but they needed those external supports. So I ran some workshops on Zoom to caregivers, and caregivers, what they say is they had no idea. For example, they didn't realize that the person could still read. So one of the first things to do is, and I do have a book that it's in English though, that goes through it. But with caregivers, the very first thing, my very first thing I cover is look after yourself first. If you burn out, what's going to happen to your loved one? So that's the first thing is, and everybody says, well, how do you do that? Well, you have to reach out to the community. You have to find somebody who's willing to say, yes, this is hard. Is there anything I can do for you? Because otherwise they feel very alone and isolated, and that's not easy. The second thing that I say is if you can understand about some of the things we're talking about, brain and behavior, Jarka probably translated it, the reading screen. Find out if that person can read. What size of font do they need? Because that is the one thing that most people go, no, people with dementia can't read. Well, it's because the size is wrong of the font. the contrast, you have to use, paper that contrasts with the font. So find out if they can read, and if they can read, then you can use memory cues that have words on it, like to the toilet. If they can't read, then just use pictures. So this is knowing who they are. I get them to, and the number one thing I ask them to do is put a life story book together or a few pages. And I hope Yurka translated some of that so that she's doing some of that. Because the more you stimulate that brain, the more you keep it engaged, the easier it's going to be for you. And that's what the caregivers have said. Wow, this was win-win. One of the other things for if they can read, the other thing that I recommend is put the memory cues together that will help. So this is what I did for my mom when she moved into long-term care. And it's funny because in long-term care, the staff say, every converter's different. We go nuts in this place. So this says how you turn it on, how you move through the channels so that they can be independently doing this on their own. So what does this person in your care that needs care, what do they need? How do you support memory loss? So put signs up to the toilet. And again, this is the words we use are familiar. So if you're in a country where this is you squat to go to the toilet, you're going to use this sign. So you need the images that connect with your environment. My images may not be the perfect ones. So get people, care partners to, from a very early point in dementia, it's important to do things like label cupboards and drawers, if that is going to help your loved one. Put an agenda together, because this is the one thing people don't realize is a lot of people with dementia are walking around going, where am I supposed to be? What's going on here? What's going on? Give them the details that match to their ability so they know what's up, there's predictability, and there's meaning and purpose in their life. So there's lots of strategies, and document what they're interested in doing. Ask the caregiver to do a checklist for anybody who's going to provide the care, but ask the person with dementia and see if it's really interesting to see how the two lists match, because sometimes they don't. And that's okay. We want to explore what the person wants, but we need the information from the care partners. The other thing is there's two things that you have to think about. One is meaning and purpose. What jobs and tasks can you give back? Caregivers overtake. Don't think that you're doing the best for your loved one. Tell them to give the jobs back to the person with dementia, but break it down to their level of ability. So add meaning and purpose, leisure and pleasure, and connection to their world. Those are the key things to keep them going. Stimulate that brain, get them engaged, set them up for success.
Thank you so much. Thank you for answering all my Alois' questions, and I'm sure our listeners will think this is very inspiring as I did. And thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
Pečující mohou využít také odlehčovací službu Centrum Seniorina nebo se setkat s odborníky v Alzheimer Café. Pomáháme lidem s Alzheimerovou nemocí a jejich rodinám prožít ještě radostný čas.